Now on my channel, I talk a lot about how repro and budget gear can be just as good as real gear. So naturally in today's video, I will spend however many minutes this video is long to debunk that exact statement. So here are the top 5 things that I regret buying and also the options that you should choose instead. Let's get into it. Okay, number 1 on this list is my first ever helmet. The first mistake here wasn't even buying the helmet itself, but where I bought it, on Amazon. If you don't know, Amazon and AliExpress aren't that different. It's just that Amazon charges up a little bit more on the price because you buy from them. So I wasted money on something that I could have gotten way cheaper on AliExpress. But what is wrong with the actual helmet? Well, the color is off, like by a mile. Super brownish, not that actual like obscure brown, but like shit brown. And the sizing. Don't get me wrong, it fit me right. The helmet actually sat okay on my head in terms of fitment. However, the proportions were way too tiny. It looked like I wore a kid's helmet, which is bad. If you want to avoid this mistake entirely, check the sizing and obviously the coloring of the helmet when you buy from AliExpress and Amazon. And one specific brand I would recommend here is FMA. Okay, next one on the list are cheap red dots. And I mean the really budget ones, like really cheap. The biggest deal breaker for me is Parallax. They have terrible parallax. If you don't know what it is, it's when the red dot shifts in its position depending on where your head is positioned in correlation to the actual red dot. Now this is really fancy talk for if you shift your head to the right slightly, the red dot will change its position as well and you'll be off target. And this problem is especially amplified in Airsoft because you get into a lot of weird shooting positions to stay in cover because well, you can utilize cover in Airsoft way more than in real life. And that way you will just be shooting off target way more than you'll be actually hitting where your red dot is pointing. Another downside is just the dimness of most red dots, especially EOTech replicas, and that they do not hold zero for shit. If you bump your rifle against your kit too hard because you transition to your secondary, you might already have shifted your zero. If you are really on a tight budget, just run iron sights until you can afford like a good budget red dot. I have a video linked up right now that I talk about red dots in, because most of the time in Airsoft you'll just be point shooting anyway and correcting from where you see your BBs heading. But if you really do want the red dot, just save a little longer and go with like a budget vector optics red dot. But to be honest, my experience here is rather limited, so if you have any other recommendations for good budget red dots, please leave them down below. Now, using a red dot to kill an enemy that you can't see is pretty cool, but what if you know there's an enemy even though you can't see him? That's where grenades come into play. And this brings me to the next item on my list. These cheap spring grenades you see on AliExpress and Amazon. They certainly work. They kill the enemy, they fly and they explode. But they're made of really cheap plastic. And if you know anything about plastics, you know that cheap plastic tends to break a lot. Now for me this is very much exaggerated because my local CQB field is strictly just concrete. So this will definitely heighten the chance of it breaking than just grass or softer ground. But the point still stands. If you have a long piece of plastic on a swivel, it tends to break off on impact. In my opinion, just save up a little bit more and grab the more expensive Airsoft designed ones, or for example buy the 3D printed ones that I've reviewed as well, linked up right now. Those just last way longer and you can get more literal bang out of your buck. Now grenades are quite loud and you will need ear protection if they get too loud. Speaking of ear protection, let's get to the next point, which are my replica amps. And I don't mean my FMA amps here, oh no, this one is way worse. My first replica amps were some no-name brand from AliExpress for about 110 euros. Quick side note here, for just 10 or 20 more euros I could have bought FMA amps. We'll get to why that matters in a second. The TLDR for this one is just, it doesn't work. The function is so bad it might just not work at all with 3-dimensional hearing and overall sound reduction and amplification. Both sides of the spectrum are worse on this one. It looks off because of the color, and overall the build quality is bad, and it also didn't work with my comms setup. This was just a complete waste of money. So if you're eyeing for a comm setup, skip the no-name clones or earmorsel stuff, and save just a little bit longer to get the FMA amps. I did a whole video on those, and I can definitely recommend them. Okay, finally, number 5. This one isn't a product at all, it's a habit. Buying too much. I have camo clothing and pieces of gear lying around that I maybe used once, if not none. I have had multiple chest rigs, plate carriers, and so on. And while that is fine, I didn't really buy them because I really needed them. And none of it was bad gear. I just bought it because it looked cool and I could. And while having gear because it looks cool is not a problem at all, it's one of the most expensive mistakes you can make on this entire list. It's not a bad 100 euro buy like the FMA amps, but instead it's a slow drip feed of sub $50 purchases that end up amounting to over 1,000 bucks in a year. Buy the stuff that you actually need, wear it, use it, and figure out what's actually missing. And then buy the next frame from there, not before. And that's pretty much the theme running through this entire video. You don't need the most expensive stuff, but you also don't want the cheapest. Usually a little bit more patience and saving up, or just a little bit more money from the get-go, can get you the best possible option for you that not only works but also lasts long. My FMA helmet and FMA amps are the best example of just that. So what did you waste your money on? Drop it down below, because you guys have way more experience than I have alone, and collecting all of that information for other people is the whole point of my channel. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Save your money, or don't. I clearly didn't. And see you next time. LARP.